Imagine a gardener standing over a delicate, promising seedling. With the best intentions in the world, she gives it everything she has. She provides water every hour, adjusts it constantly to catch the perfect light, and hovers over it, anxiously checking for signs of growth. Her effort is immense, born from a deep desire for the plant to thrive. But one day, she notices the seedling is not growing stronger. It is wilting, its roots suffocating, its stem weak. The paradox is as cruel as it is true. Her very effort, her constant and anxious doing, is the very thing preventing its growth. This is the silent tragedy of the woman who tries too hard in love. Your effort, your care, your attentiveness, these are beautiful qualities. But when they are driven by an underlying fear that if you stop, everything will wither and die, they cease to be nourishing. They become a form of pressure, an energetic overwatering that suffocates the very connection you are trying to cultivate. You offer more, you give more, you analyze more, all in the hope of proving your value, yet you are met with a frustrating and confusing indifference. This pattern is not your fault. It is born from a myth we have been taught our entire lives, the myth of emotional mechanics. The idea that a relationship is like a machine, and if we just apply enough force, turn enough gears, and lubricate every part with our constant effort, it will inevitably run smoothly. But a human connection is not a machine. It is a living, breathing ecosystem, and it follows the laws of nature, not the laws of mechanics. What if the secret to a thriving connection isn't in what you add, but in the space you allow? What if true value is revealed not in the intensity of your effort, but in the quiet wisdom of your restraint? This video will unravel this profound psychological truth. We will explore the science of perceived value and the subtle energetics of attraction to understand why, in the world of the human heart, trying less can so often make a man value you more. This is not a lesson in playing games. It is a lesson in becoming a wise gardener of your own energy, learning that sometimes the most powerful act of love is to simply and confidently step back and allow the sun to do its work. To understand why your well-intentioned effort can have the opposite of its intended effect, we must first give a name to the energetic role you step into when you are trying too hard. In these moments, you are not a partner. You are a performer. The performer is the part of us that has been conditioned to believe that our authentic, unadorned presence is not enough to be valued. She operates from a silent, painful core belief. Love and attention must be earned through my flawless effort. The performer is an expert in anticipating needs. She is the one who sends the perfect text at the perfect time, who plans the perfect date, who smooths over every awkward silence in a conversation. She becomes a student of his interests, a manager of his moods, and a constant source of support and encouragement. Her love becomes a service, a tireless performance designed to receive a single, unspoken reward, the validation that she is worthy of being chosen. Here, we encounter a fundamental law of the human psyche that operates beyond our conscious control, the law of perceived value. In any system, from economics to human dynamics, we do not assign high value to that which is easily and constantly available. Think of diamonds. Their value is not just in their beauty, but in their perceived rarity. Your constant, guaranteed effort, while beautiful in its intention, signals over-availability. It makes your presence feel abundant, common, and therefore less precious. Your value becomes invisible not because it isn't there, but because it is everywhere, offered so freely and so consistently that it is no longer seen as a gift to be cherished, but as a utility to be expected. The effect of this is deeper than just perception. It is biological. The energy of the performer is not calm. It is the energy of anxiety. She is constantly, unconsciously monitoring his reactions, scanning his face for approval, analyzing the subtext of his words. This state of hypervigilance keeps her own nervous system in a low-grade state of fight or flight, subtly flooding her system with the stress hormone, cortisol. And his nervous system reads this. Through the unconscious process of neuroception, it does not register her effort as love or care. It registers it as instability. It feels her underlying lack of safety in herself. He senses, without ever forming the thought, that her well-being is fragile and has become dependent on him. This is not felt as a gift. It is felt as a pressure, a subtle and unspoken responsibility he never agreed to carry. And so, he unconsciously withdraws, not from her love, but from the anxiety that her performance is laced with. This is the tragic irony we must understand. The more she performs to prove she is a source of peace, the less peaceful her presence actually feels. Her effort becomes invisible because it is filtered through the noise of her own fear. In the language of our gardener, she is the one who is constantly digging up the seed to see if it has sprouted, and her anxious energy is scorching the very soil she is trying to cultivate. To understand why your well-intentioned effort can have the opposite of its intended effect, we must first give a name to the energetic role you step into when you are trying too hard. In these moments, you are not a partner. You are a performer. The performer is the part of us that has been conditioned to believe that our authentic, unadorned presence is not enough to be valued. She operates from a silent, painful core belief. Love and attention must be earned through my flawless effort. The performer is an expert in anticipating needs. She is the one who sends the perfect text at the perfect time, who plans the perfect date, who smooths over every awkward silence in a conversation. She becomes a student of his interests, a manager of his moods, and a constant source of support and encouragement. Her love becomes a service, a tireless performance, designed to receive a single, unspoken reward, the validation that she is worthy of being chosen. Here, we encounter a fundamental law of the human psyche that operates beyond our conscious control, the law of perceived value. In any system, from economics to human dynamics, we do not assign high value to that which is easily and constantly available. Think of diamonds. Their value is not just in their beauty, but in their perceived rarity. Your constant, guaranteed effort, while beautiful in its intention, signals over-availability. It makes your presence feel abundant, common, and therefore less precious. Your value becomes invisible, not because it isn't there, but because it is everywhere, offered so freely and so consistently that it is no longer seen as a gift to be cherished, but as a utility to be expected. The effect of this is deeper than just perception. It is biological. The energy of the performer is not calm. It is the energy of anxiety. She is constantly, unconsciously monitoring his reactions, scanning his face for approval, analyzing the subtext of his words. This state of hypervigilance keeps her own nervous system in a low-grade state of fight or flight, subtly flooding her system with the stress hormone cortisol. And his nervous system reads this. Through the unconscious process of neuroception, it does not register her effort as love or care. It registers it as instability. It feels her underlying lack of safety in herself. He senses, without ever forming the thought, that her well-being is fragile and has become dependent on him. This is not felt as a gift. It is felt as a pressure, a subtle and unspoken responsibility he never agreed to carry. And so, he unconsciously withdraws, not from her love, but from the anxiety that her performance is laced with. This is the tragic irony we must understand. The more she performs to prove she is a source of peace, the less peaceful her presence actually feels. Her effort becomes invisible because it is filtered through the noise of her own fear. In the language of our gardener, she is the one who is constantly digging up the seed to see if it has sprouted, and her anxious energy is scorching the very soil she is trying to cultivate. If the constant push of your energy is what makes your effort invisible, then what happens when you consciously stop pushing? The answer is not, as many women fear, that the connection simply withers and dies from neglect. When you stop trying so hard, you are not creating emptiness. You are creating a vacuum. And in the world of human dynamics, a vacuum is one of the most powerful and generative forces in existence. Think of it as a pattern interrupt on a grand scale. His mind and his nervous system had become habituated to the constant input of your energy. Your texts, your plans, your emotional labor, it was all a predictable part of the landscape. He didn't have to wonder what you were thinking, because you were always telling him. He didn't have to invest his own energy to move the connection forward, because you were providing enough for both of you. He was a passive recipient of your performance. But when you pull that energy back, when you try less, the established pattern is broken. The constant energetic push she was used to is suddenly gone. He is met not with your effort, but with space. And this space is profoundly unsettling in a magnetic way to the human psyche. It forces him to switch, for the very first time, from being a passive recipient into an active questioner. His mind, which had been comfortably at rest, now has a problem to solve. A series of questions begin to echo in the new silence. Where did she go? Why isn't she reaching out? What is she thinking? Did I do something wrong? Your absence from his mental landscape becomes more present than your constant effort ever was. You have ceased to be a predictable part of his environment and have become an intriguing mystery. This is where the true power of the vacuum effect begins. In the absence of your constant input, his mind will instinctively begin to fill the space you left behind. But it will not fill it with the reality of your exhaustion or your frustration. It will fill it with his own projections, his own idealizations, and his own longings. He starts to remember the best of you. The sound of your laugh, a moment you connected, the feeling of your presence. He begins to paint a romanticized portrait of you in the gallery of his mind, a portrait that is often far more powerful than the reality of your constant anxious performance ever was. This is not a conscious process. It is the psyche's natural response to an unresolved question. By trying less, you are not playing a game of hard to get. You are creating the necessary psychological and energetic space for his own mind and his own desire to do the work. You are no longer the one supplying all the energy. You are creating a dynamic where he feels an undeniable pull to supply his own. You are inviting him, through your quiet withdrawal, to finally step forward into the space you have so wisely created. At this point, a crucial distinction must be made, for this is where the path of sovereign power diverges from the path of manipulative games. The vacuum effect is powerful, but if it is created artificially, it will eventually collapse. The advice to try less is not an invitation to become cold, distant, or to strategically ignore someone to provoke a reaction. That is the shadow version of this wisdom, a tactic born from the same fear and need for control that once fueled the chase. That is still a performance. The true alchemical shift we are exploring is not about what you stop doing with him. It is about what you start doing with yourself. The goal is to stop trying so hard with him because you are genuinely and joyfully busy building a life for you. It is about having a life so full with your own purpose, your own passions, your own friendships, and your own deep well of inner peace that your energy is no longer primarily available to be focused on him. Your attention becomes a precious resource because it is allocated first and foremost to the project of your own becoming. This is the very heart of the InnerAtlas philosophy. The woman who is irresistibly magnetic is not the one who has mastered the art of pretending to be busy. She is the one who has mastered the art of living a life that genuinely captivates her. Her unavailability is not a strategy. It is a symptom of her own fulfillment. Think back to our archetype of the hearth fire. A fire does not try to be unavailable to the cold. It is simply by its very nature occupied with its own burning. Its purpose is to radiate its own heat. The woman who embodies this is not ignoring him when she takes time to read a book, go for a walk, or work on her passion project. She is attending to her own hearth. She is adding fuel to her own flame, ensuring that her warmth comes from a self-sustaining source, not from the fleeting validation of his attention. When a man feels the shift in your availability, his unconscious knows the difference between a game and a truth. An artificial distance feels cold and punitive. It creates a challenge for his ego. But the authentic distance that comes from a full life feels different. It feels like warmth, like substance, like a world he wishes to be a part of. He is not just drawn to you. He is drawn to the richness of the life you have created for yourself. He does not just want your attention. He wants to be worthy of entering the vibrant world you already inhabit. This is the difference between being a puzzle he wants to solve and being a sanctuary he longs to enter. To understand that you must become a full and sovereign woman is the first step. To have a daily practice that builds this reality is the quantum leap. This is the practical engine that transforms the philosophy into your lived experience. We call this the ritual of purposeful neglect. The name is intentionally paradoxical. You are not learning to neglect him. You are learning to purposefully neglect the compulsive pattern of overgiving and overtrying that has been draining your life force. It is the art of consciously redirecting the energy you would normally spend on the performance of the relationship back into the foundation of your own life. Here is how you practice it. First, identify the impulse. The first step is to become a mindful observer of your own urges. Throughout your day, notice the exact moment the impulse to try arises. It might be the sudden urge to send him a meme just to feel connected. It might be the impulse to immediately rearrange your schedule to accommodate his last-minute request. It might be the desire to fix his bad mood or solve a problem for him. Do not act on it. Do not judge it. Simply notice it as a surge of energy within you. Second, name the underlying need. Once you have identified the impulse, ask yourself a single powerful question. What is the more that I am truly seeking in this moment? Be honest. The impulse to send a meme is often a bid for connection. The impulse to rearrange your schedule is often a desire for approval. The impulse to fix his mood is often a need for reassurance that the connection is safe. Naming the underlying need is crucial because it separates the authentic feeling from the conditioned, compulsive action. Third, the sovereign pivot. This is the core of the ritual. Once you have named the need, you will perform a sovereign pivot. You will take the exact energy of that need and, for a moment, purposefully neglect the relationship to consciously invest that energy back into yourself. If the need you identified is connection, use that impulse to send a heartfelt message to a close friend or family member. Water the gardens of your own community. If the need is for approval or validation, use that energy to spend 5 minutes working on a personal project that makes you feel proud of yourself. Review your accomplishments. Become your own source of applause. If the need is for reassurance, use that moment to perform an act of self-care. Make yourself a cup of tea. Step outside and take 3 deep breaths. Reassure your own nervous system that it is safe, right here, right now, without any external input. This is not about deprivation. It is about self-nourishment. Each time you perform this sovereign pivot, you are actively building your full life. You are becoming your own source. You are, brick by brick, building your own hearth. And when this practice becomes your habit, the external results in your relationships begin to shift in ways that are both profound and inevitable. When a woman consistently practices the ritual of purposeful neglect, when she chooses to water her own garden first, the shift that occurs is not just internal. The external world, and specifically the man in her life, cannot help but respond to her new energetic reality. This is where the paradox of the title comes into full, undeniable manifestation. For a long time, you may have been playing the role of the energetic provider. You were providing the effort, the emotional support, the plans, and the constant stream of attention that kept the connection alive. In this role, your energy, like tap water, was seen as a utility always available, always flowing, and therefore often taken for granted. But as you practice the sovereign pivot, you are no longer the provider. You are slowly, powerfully, and inevitably becoming the prize, and the difference is crucial. A provider is valued for what she does. A prize is valued for what it is. A provider's energy is consumed. A prize's energy is cherished. The moment you stop being the primary energetic provider in the relationship, the dynamic is forced to rebalance. A vacuum created by your purposeful neglect does not create a void of anger or punishment. It creates a quiet, compelling space that invites him to step forward, to invest, to try. He moves from being the passive judge of your performance to the active seeker of your presence. And as he begins to invest his own time, his own thoughts, his own energy to bridge the space you have created, his perception of your value transforms. He begins to value your attention because it is no longer a given. He begins to value your time because he knows it is dedicated first to your own rich life. He begins to value your presence because it is no longer a constant utility, but a precious gift that he is now privileged to receive. This is the psychological truth behind why trying less makes him value you more. It is not a game. It is a fundamental law of human investment. We value what we put our own effort into. By creating the space for him to invest in the connection, you allow him to build his own profound sense of your value in his heart and mind. He is no longer just a passive recipient of your love. He is an active participant in earning your presence. It is in this shift that you are no longer the performer trying to win his approval. You are the prize he is afraid to lose. And it is here that we discover the final, most liberating truth of this entire journey. We began this journey with the exhaustion of the performer, the gardener who, with the best intentions, was overwatering the very connection she hoped to see thrive. We have traveled through the psychology of perceived value, the power of the vacuum, and the sacred practice of purposeful neglect. And we arrive here at the final and most liberating truth. The psychological truth promised in our title is not just that trying less makes him value you more. That is only the surface of a much deeper reality. The ultimate truth is this: the goal is not to make him value you more. That is simply the beautiful, inevitable consequence. The true goal is to build a life so full of your own value, your own purpose, and your own peace, that his validation shifts from being a desperate requirement to a pleasant but non-essential addition. Trying less with him is the ultimate act of loving yourself more. When you practice this, you cease to be a satellite orbiting his world, desperately trying to stay in his field of vision. You become your own sun. You become a planet with its own atmosphere, its own ecosystem, its own effortless gravity. Others are then naturally drawn into your orbit, not because you pulled them, but because of the undeniable weight and warmth of your own centered existence. You came to this video perhaps wanting to learn how to be valued by him. And you leave having learned how to value yourself so completely that his valuation is no longer the prize. You are the prize. You are the gardener who has stopped anxiously hovering over a single seedling and has instead turned to tend to the vast, beautiful, and wild garden of her own soul. And the final secret is that when you do this, you discover that everything you were ever seeking from the outside value, desire, connection, and love was already growing there, waiting for your own attention to make it bloom.